structure. And then Donald had a question. He said, can we go back to Bolinas?
Yeah. Oh, it's going the wrong way. Let me. Yeah, so Bolinas has 63 registered short-term rentals with 624 properties that are currently developed with living units, resulting in about a 10% rate of parcels used to short-term rentals.
Did you have a question about Bolinas or any of the other numbers? Okay, thanks. I can put in the chat no. So I think
okay.
If there aren't other questions on that, we can go on. We still have a little bit to talk about in terms of what this means around what kinds of revenues people get for short-term versus long-term rental.
Yeah, and here it is. There's not as much data around a long-term rental market in West Marin, but on the eastern side of the county, we do have information for Novato, San Rafael, Petaluma, because there is a portion of Petaluma in the unincorporated area, San Anselmo and Mill Valley. And so with long-term in Novato, the average monthly rent provided by, this information is provided by Rent Cafe, is $2,451. And then conversely, with a short-term rental, the median monthly rent is about $3,375. So you see really in every column on the short-term rental side, there's an opportunity to make some more money than the long-term average monthly rent. This is something that we want to be aware of and really consider as it relates to maintaining and preserving our existing housing stock, existing affordable housing. There's a lot of factors at play here, but it's definitely something that we want to be cognizant of as we start to craft short-term rental regulations. This is the short-term rental information for West Marin. It's not, again, fully encompassing all of the communities, but Donald was asking about Bolinas. You can see that an average nightly rent in Bolinas is $374. People typically have an 83% occupancy rate when they're operating these short-term rentals, and can make a revenue of about $7,592 per month. This information comes from a website called AirDNA. Anyone here is welcome to create an account there and find this information as well. Gives just some additional data points and things like what kind of rental types people are operating out in these areas. So you've got in Bolinas, for example, 88% are entire homes, while 12% are private rooms. And this is something that we are considering as well when we're thinking about the differences between the different types of short-term rentals that exist out there. You have folks that do have hosted short-term rental operations. That's where they're at the property. They may be renting out a room, they may be renting out an accessory structure, but living on that property at the same time, versus an unhosted short-term rental where it is the entire home and a person's not there to kind of oversee the site. As Sarah previously noted, we have been looking into the complaints that we've received. We have 107 complaints around unauthorized short-term rentals. So we do recognize that people will continue to operate out of conformance. And that's why we have host compliance who monitor short-term rentals that are advertised online on websites such as Airbnb or VRBO. When we find out about those unauthorized short-term rentals, the Department of Finance goes through an enforcement process to bring them into compliance. That could be removing your advertisement. It could also include remitting back taxes that you did not give to the county originally because you weren't operating in compliance. So that is something that we've looked into, and we have a process to bring folks into conformance. Then additionally, we have just those general good neighbor issues that can come up, such as trash. We get a lot of complaints around trash issues, noise issues, folks having parties, people outside on weeknights when, you know, you might be working, but some people are on vacation. And so there's just a different kind of interaction with the neighborhood, really. So those are some of the ones we see most often. We also have like some of these numbers are skewed with like other complaints. Like sometimes people just contact the hotline with questions, or they say like, can someone please call me? So we have other things that get logged as a result. We also had a shelter in place during the pandemic. We were still in the pandemic, during the shelter in place period of our COVID-19 response. But short-term rentals were not permitted for the most part. There were a few exceptions, and so people continued to operate, and that was an area of great concern for a lot of folks. And so a lot of our complaints came from that time. But overall, since September 2018, we've received 291 communications in relation to specific short-term rental operators.
In that whole time?
Yeah. That said, I should clarify that this is data from host compliance, which is our short-term rental monitoring. It
Right.
does not encompass all of the communications that may have gone to a supervisor or manager of a program. So we do collect those, and we have records of those communications. So that does exist as well. Any additional questions around this slide or comments?
I'm just surprised at how few. I mean, I don't see that this is such a big issue as that.
Yeah, and I monitor the hotline, and I talk to everybody who does submit a complaint. And a lot of times it is just providing them with the right information. So it's like, you had a noise issue. Let's figure out how we can address this in a more immediate way. So, you know, if there's a noise complaint, it has to go to the sheriff. If it's parking, typically handled by the sheriff as well, but it may be around the fact that the neighbor converted their garage and doesn't even have parking anymore. So it's really like functioning as a way to get to like the root cause around some of these issues. So it is a conversation. There are people that are like listening and taking note of all these complaints. So
and this might also mean that the regulations that went into place around the good neighbor requirements, and you need to contact somebody, and you need to know who to contact and what's going on. That might also be part of the reason that they're not escalating and going through the compliance service.
Yeah, I am pretty astonished by this. I mean, I think the number of complaints is really exceedingly low. And I do think that the good neighbor regulations were a good idea and have had a salutary impact, because it alerted people who are doing short-term rentals to be considerate of their neighbors. But if I look at these numbers, I say disturbances are a non-problem. I think you probably have more issues between neighbors than you do with short-term rental people.
Yeah, and we also have, in my conversations with people after we receive complaints, part of the regulations, right, is letting your neighbor have your contact information. And so sometimes, because we're not available on the weekends to monitor this hotline, I'll call someone on a Monday and they're like, you know what, actually, I just reached out to my neighbor and they addressed it. So it does have a positive effect at times.
Yes, but I mean, you put these numbers out here and without any context, what the only thing, and I think Katie is sort of reflecting the same comment. These suggest that there is no significant neighbor complaint issue from short-term rentals. Why don't you say that?
We're really kind of letting people know what the overall picture is, and we are trying to get a sense of
No, I don't think that's fair. I think that you list numbers like this without any context, and it suggests that there's a problem. And I think these numbers show that there isn't.
We're not suggesting that there is or there isn't. It is really more to give an overall picture of the situation of short-term rentals in the county. And what we're trying to understand at this point in it, we don't have a particular scope for the work that we're doing in terms of the specifics, where the specific areas that we want to be addressing further. And so that's we're kind of at this stage of things, giving people a picture of what's going on, and listening to what people say about it. It's not a there's no intent behind any of it. I think that the point that this is a low number given it's 4 years is absolutely correct, and a good one, that we haven't gotten a lot over that time.
But I don't think that's a fair representation of what you're doing. I think what you're doing is putting out numbers to suggest that there are problems, 291 problems, and without any comment. And I just think that's not appropriate.
Okay. Well, I hear you. That is not what we're doing. We're not conveying the 291 is either low or high. I think one thing that is interesting here is that the highest number is about the unauthorized short-term rentals. We're really we have not been working with this data to interpret it in any way, one way or another. And I'd suggest let's go on with the presentation and with the discussion, and kind of get into those those issues of hearing from you about your thoughts on what the county should or should not be doing around short-term rentals.
Could I interject for a moment?
Yeah.
My name's Eric Davis, and I think it would be very useful and instructive if you broke the data down by time period, because it's looking at the entire time period really doesn't give you if you will, a glimpse or insight into where there may be continuing problems, where there were problems, et cetera. For example, the last comment about unauthorized short-term rentals, I would be willing to bet that those are primarily during the period in which short-term rentals were not permitted. And but maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyway, I think just giving a total since September 2018 is not useful. It's not instructive. I think you need to break down by year or whatever.
I also think like you're noting, like providing some more context to it, breaking it down by area as well. Like I can say like Novato does not have the same level of complaints as somewhere else in the county. So I think like that is something that would be helpful to show as well. I appreciate those comments.
Okay, should we go on?
Yeah. Looking into what other communities are doing in the area, as we talked about, like, does it make sense to have a one-size-fits-all, or should it be more in keeping with neighboring communities that do have regulations in place is something that we've been discussing. So just to understand these community comparisons. So currently Belvedere, Tiburon, Sausalito, Larkspur, and Corte Madera prohibit short-term rentals. I can note that Corte Madera is beginning a public outreach process to kind of get the community's temperature and planning commission's temperature on short-term rentals and whether or not those need to be regulated. San Anselmo and Ross allow short-term rentals, but they don't have any specific regulations around how they're operated. And Mill Valley, San Rafael, Novato, and Fairfax allow short-term rentals, but they are subject to different regulations and registrations. And this is the other part of where we really want some additional feedback. As Sarah noted, we are trying to draft some guiding principles that will inform the process that we plan and the regulations that we develop for short-term rentals, recognizing that there are a lot of different folks at the table. We want to be inclusive of everybody's opinions and thoughts, and we definitely want yours as well. But just kind of want to present what we have developed so far as guiding principles. The first one is prioritize housing supply and affordability. Consider regulations in light of their effect on the cost and availability of housing within individual communities. We want to advance equity and access to economic opportunities, services, and activities, recognizing that, Marin County is a beautiful place. Some people want to come visit. We have the coast, we have hiking, we have mountains. We have a lot of wonderful things for people to want to come here. And we want to consider environmental constraints. Of a person in the Dillon Beach water district brought to our attention that water availability is a concern in some communities. So we want to be cognizant of those sort of constraints as well. We want to recognize again that Marin County has historically provided vacation opportunities to the greater Bay Area region and state, really nationally. So that's something that we want to keep in mind. We want to also understand the short-term rental market, not just for service providers, but for community members and those who kind of might help keep that short-term rental economy afloat. And then also distinguish among types of short-term rental operations and operators. As I previously noted, the difference between a whole home operation versus a hosted short-term rental. Those are things that we're also keeping in mind. We also need to develop regulations that are clear, affordable, simple, and enforceable. We can't necessarily create policies and regulations that we can't ultimately enforce. And in light of affordability, one of the things we also have to consider is cost recovery for the county itself. This is not a program that's funded. It's really just staff time working towards kind of developing this and addressing current short-term rental issues that arise. So we want to make sure that we are also recovering the costs to the county to operate this program. And then we also want to assure that short-term rentals are good neighbors, considering noise, parking, trash, and other neighborhood quality of life concerns. As we kind of just talked about some of the information we received, but there's always opportunities to think more creatively around how we can be good neighbors all the time.
And Kathleen, if I could just jump in one more time, just to give a little more sort of context and flavor to this. The matter of short-term rentals has come up in all of the housing planning that we have been doing right now. And as you could see from the numbers, in some parts of Marin, there's a pretty significant amount of the housing supply is in this use, and so that's the major impetus for us to be considering this at this point in time. And that's why the very first one is about housing supply and affordability. Now, this is not something that's a clearly simple one-to-one relationship, because we do see a lot of situations where somebody might have an accessory dwelling unit. They're living in their house, but they have an accessory dwelling unit that they're renting out as a short-term rental, and that's actually giving them the income to stay in their home or to make it more possible. So there are a lot of layers to all of this, and that is exactly the purpose of trying to really understand what's going on so that we're bringing forward regulations, or any recommendations that we bring forward are dealing with problems that we have that are together rising to the level of needing to be dealt with. So that's a big piece of it for us. And then on the matter of looking at equity, looking at these issues, we also that whole matter of how the competition of the possibility of short-term rental and the attractiveness of that takes housing off of the rental market. And again, in West Marin, we particularly see that happening, where there's not housing available for lower income workers who are supporting the businesses, the services in that area. And so those are some of the issues we're looking at. And what we're really trying to consider at this point in time is, are we looking just at West Marin? Are we looking countywide? What's, which way should we be slicing and dicing this in terms of the geographic applicability of what we're doing? So those are just some of the considerations we have.
I have a couple questions. One of them is, when you're looking at all this, and by the way, I'm a lifelong Marinite. I was born and raised, gone to school here and everything, and I know about the housing crisis, and believe me, it is upsetting to all of us. Are you also taking into consideration the businesses who do rely on short-term rentals for a lot of their income? Because that's something I've been focused mostly on Stinson Beach much of my life. And I know that our little community during the pandemic, when there were no rentals happening and not many day visitors, really suffered. So there's a balance there that I would hope is part of your study, however you can make that fit in, but it isn't all black and white. I mean, it can't be a whole picture in my mind without looking at the financial consequences, which also provides jobs for people. So it's, not a matter of people making money, it's a matter of jobs. So you'll be seeing me a lot in these meetings. I care passionately about this. Yes, I have a business that revolves around short-term rentals, but I'm also, being a lifelong Marinite, I care about how we resolve this. So I don't mean to be too chatty, but it's a nice opportunity in a smaller group. So thank you.
Yeah, and that is something that we're definitely curious about. I'm wondering about the pace of, like, the flow of this. We can revisit the draft guiding principles to talk about at the end, because I do have some slides about next steps and who we want to engage with, because we recognize that there are lots of different stakeholders. I could share that before we get into the discussion about additional guiding principles, if folks would like that.
Let's do that.
Okay. So yeah, so next steps, additional stakeholder engagement. In addition to identifying stakeholders and starting to think about focus groups and discussions we can have, I just wanted to note that we plan to host additional sessions like this throughout the entire short-term rental ordinance update. We also want to make this a more inclusive process, so we'll be conducting outreach in Spanish as well. But as Katie noted, yeah, there are a lot of people who are affected by short-term rentals in different ways. So you've got community members who don't operate short-term rentals. You have short-term rental operators, both hosted and unhosted. I did see a note in the chat quickly about how some people may actually use short-term rentals to have affordable housing, and we do recognize that. We've received comments from people in the past about that as well. It's allowing folks to have flexibility in their life. It's allowing them to age in place. So we want to hear from both like hosted and unhosted short-term rental operators. We've also heard from the agricultural community that short-term rentals can help their overall business operations, but it can also impact the ability for them to find workers. So there's a lot of factors at play there. So the agricultural community is some group that we definitely want to hear from. There's local business owners, housing groups. I've just identified a few. So you've got the CLAM that's out in West Marin, the San Geronimo Valley Housing Association, Bolinas Community Land Trust, all those groups. There's also the Marin Association of Realtors. We received a feedback in previous community discussions that they would be a good group to work with and hear from as well. Local school districts, emergency service providers, as well as utility providers. That's just to name a few. If you have any other groups or people that you think that we should be engaging with, like please post it in the chat or share during this discussion time that we'll have in just a moment. Overall, we're working towards developing those short-term rental regulations. And the way that this is going to happen is that we're going to work with the Board of Supervisors. This Board of Supervisors established a short-term rental subcommittee that will help develop policy goals based on public engagement and feedback we receive from all of you. We want to refine a detailed strategy and apply strategies that have worked in the past in other areas if possible. We have we have agencies across the state right now that are working to develop short-term rental regulations. They're different, vary in all the ways you can think. But we want to see what works across the state and see if there's anything that we can learn from how other folks have gone through their process. We will need to work with the Coastal Commission staff to determine the necessary approvals for this work. Part of West Marin is located in the Marin County coastal zone. The Coastal Commission has authority over a lot of work that takes place out there, and they review ordinances and policies that impact that land out there. And so as part of this work, we will have to maybe get a local coastal program amendment or a coastal development permit to authorize these short-term rental regulations in the coastal zone. And then ultimately, we hope to create a draft for public review, and we would like that to be available in spring 2023. I can't say it will be the final draft, but we definitely want to bring something to everybody to really consider and further discuss as we work towards getting towards that final goal of those policies that we can approve and can support and are proud of. So that is the end. I can go back to the guiding principles, or I also have I have another tab open with some Post-it notes, and we can do some brainstorming. We'd like to switch it up a little bit.
So I'm going to take a look in the chat now. First of all, let's start with if anybody has questions or comments they want to make just now. And meanwhile, I'll also look at what's in the chat.
I would make a comment. It sort of follows up on the questions I had about the usefulness of the data about complaints, and that is that there seems to be a hypothesis or principle that there is a problem. And so I think that it's very important that the data be developed in a way that can, if there is a problem, can be demonstrated. And so I urge that going forward. And I had a question, which is about the establishment of the subcommittee, which suggests to me that there's a committee of the supervisors that this is within, and I'm interested in what that committee is, and I'm also interested in when and how the subcommittee was established.
So I'll answer that question first. The Board of Supervisors they have ad hoc subcommittees that work with and receive information, and that is how we can kind of work through topics that and get them ready to bring to the board. And so this subcommittee has probably existed since, was it probably 2020, when as a
Prior to that, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the work to start updating, I wasn't, both Sarah and I weren't at the county at the time, but it was in place before 2018. There was a working group and a consultant that developed a white paper on short-term rentals in the county, and that kind of kicked off this initiative to create a short-term rental ordinance. So it's been in place for a while.
Yeah, and then your first point about determining that there is a problem or not, that's I appreciate your raising that. That is exactly what we're working to understand at this stage of things. We have gotten clear feedback and indication in West Marin from residents, from service providers, from kind of requests through the county supervisor, through Supervisor Rodoni, that there are concerns about the short-term rental situation there, and community groups as well as individual residents have done a lot of work around that question. So we have an understanding that there is a problem, or that it feels like this is a situation that should be addressed in West Marin. We're really just initiating the work in the rest of the county to understand that, because if we're thinking about taking further steps around short-term rentals, we don't want to be, we want it to be targeted towards a problem that does need to be solved, and not assume that there's something there that there isn't. Particularly around that matter of, if people are finding that short-term rentals are an important piece of, their own housing picture and their own housing affordability picture, by renting out rooms or giving them the flexibility that they need, that's an important thing to consider as well. Are there other questions, Katie?
If I could, sorry, if I could just add another thing in that is a real concern to me, that not everybody thinks about. I have a big family. I have 5 children and 10 grandchildren, and we love to be together. And to be able to go together and stay in a hotel is not very feasible. First of all, it's god awful expensive to have that many family members. But also part of the fun of going away is to be able to cook together and wake up together and do all those fun things. And when you do away with short-term rentals, only in that it gives an affordable way for families to have family reunions, to come together in an affordable fashion. So families who could never afford to get 4 or 5 hotel rooms for a week can afford to go together and get a fairly reasonably priced short-term rental. So, be aware that some of these things have the opposite boomerang effect of actually making it more elitist. I mean, many of those things is the cause of why Stinson Beach has become out of reach for us normal people. We have to look at what all the ramifications are. And I really am concerned that by recognizing the housing crisis that we have, particularly in West Marin, but all over, that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so that the families and people on lower incomes can't come out and get time away from their lives. You know, somebody who's making $150,000 or $200,000 a year have no problem coming out and renting. But families who can only afford a few days in a whole big house, you don't want to throw away their possibilities. So just add that into the milieu somewhere is what I'd like to say.
Yeah, and that's exactly where that is on our minds, in terms of, first of all, that this is one of the purposes that Marin serves for a lot of people, is that kind of hangout and vacation and relax together opportunity. And also what we're thinking about on that second bullet on the slide that Kathleen has up with equity in access to activities. You know, some of the short-term rentals are pretty pricey, and some of them are, you know, something that is a really good and affordable opportunity. And it looks like Donna left, but he did put a comment in the chat, you know, considering that short-term rentals make owning a West Marin property affordable. That's, you know, that notion that we've mentioned, that, you know, you can rent it out and make it a little bit more possible to own the property at all. And that would be, you know, more of the part-time or hosted kind of situation. And then also, he mentioned the Coastal Commission, and Kathleen mentioned Coastal Commission as well. You know, for the portion that's in the coastal zone, we are definitely in communication with them and aware of this issue being considered by the Coastal Commission all up and down the coast. You know, we are definitely not alone in this. And you know, for reasons that are totally consistent with their mission, the Coastal Commission does want to make sure that these opportunities exist. And you know, we're aligned with them on that front of wanting to make sure that there are opportunities for people to visit and stay and enjoy our coastal areas and all of the parts of Marin that they want to go to. So, you know, we will be working with them and through them on this. This is called out in our local coastal plan as something to be working on as well. So, you know, we're going to be thinking about this together. And then I also see a question in the chat about where do we go to find the slides from the meeting on the Marin County website. We'll be posting them at the URL that Kathleen put up. It is Marin County
.org/STR. And you can always, again, send us an email at str@marincounty.org with any questions you might have, any comments, any requests for these materials that we have shown this evening. Happy to share whatever I can.
I have to sign off, but I want to thank you. And it was really nice to have a small group so I could be yappy. But thank you, ladies, for your time and effort. And I know you're up for a lot of hours of this stuff, so good luck.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, yeah.
Thanks very much.
Other comments, questions, thoughts? You know, things that you've been wondering about with this?
I'll stop the share just in case. We can see each other.
At the risk of being repetitive, I would think it would be useful for future meetings if you broke the data, if you can, down by time period and, as you suggested, Kathleen, by area. That would be very, I think, useful. I'm talking about the complaints.
Yeah, no, I hear you and agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I think that they, you know, the overall point about the complaints would be that, yeah, we haven't gotten a whole lot of them. You know, we don't know why, but at least one indication of it is that that the parameters that we've set out have worked, and or that, you know, I wouldn't say that that's the only reason. I think that also, you know, there is a lot of recognition that these are neighborhoods, these are neighbors, and the people who own these properties are thinking about it from the standpoint of being respectful.
Yeah, and we've had direct response to complaints too, like you're noting, like someone had didn't have limitations on how often or how many nights someone could rent, and so people were renting just one night after the other, and they're just having parties, and that was like, oh, we're getting a lot of complaints around the fact that you're having a party every night, and they changed their listing to be 2 nights minimum, and the issue stopped. So it is a lot of like communication and people being responsive. So I have to agree with what Sarah's saying.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's all for this evening. More than welcome to come to the other 4 that we'll be hosting if you want, and see the changes that we've made with your feedback. Or once I have it, and I provided Eric, I provided you with my contact information. We can give it to you so that you can see that as well. Just send me an email so that I've got your contact information as well.
Thank you, Kathleen and Sarah.
thanks, Tanya.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Have a nice evening.